Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and my guest today is Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, John.
Oh, thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always, and happy post Thanksgiving. Even though it's not necessarily Thanksgiving in your place where you're at, that's okay.
Yeah, we have it last month. I think it was second weekend of October.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's a great holiday. Whether it's in Canada or especially United States, it's a great holiday. And so, what's happening now in the news of Ukraine is that it's nothing much changed since we discussed it last time. I think everybody is waiting of Donald Trump's direct involvement in the situation. And well, we can guess as much as we want
Yes.
what he's going to do.
We do, again we have to keep in mind, especially for our listeners, that we cannot possibly know what is going on behind the scenes, behind what classified operations may be in progress by either the United States or Ukraine
Or Russia.
or Russia. Exactly. We can make educated guesses, and it has been said by those who study intelligence operations that most nations get about 80% of their available intelligence from open sources. It's that
Right.
remaining 20% that creates the potential for strategic or operational surprise. So in this case, Ukraine still has within its power and there have been some subtle hints of this on the part of Zelensky as others, that, for example, there might be a second operation, into Russia or against Russia, or striking deep targets, or there might be something else in mind. As you and I have discussed, there is the potential, not necessarily a certainty, that Ukraine could exercise a surprise operation which could be aimed at isolating the Crimea, which would be a major operational coup for Ukraine in this war, and create a much more favorable position, conditions for an armistice, and which Russia would thoroughly hate, but they would have very little choice, especially given the increasing losses they have been taking, and even among the fragility of their North Korean allies, particularly on the main front themselves, and evidence of desertions, evidence of unwillingness to really fight and engage with the Ukrainians, and other things which indicate that really Russia is beginning to resemble an exhausted heavyweight fighter, just continuing on momentum and hoping that his opponent is going to collapse. But there are indications that are, again, this is somewhat, it resembles to me what the kind of things that I was observing and reading about during the North African operations, when the Axis was closing on Alexandria. They had taken Tobruk, and they were racing towards Alexandria, and the Western world and all the newspapers are in alarm about the Axis about to take over Egypt and reach the Suez Canal and break through. And yet they did not realize that the Axis forces were overextended. They were practically exhausted by the time they reached the El Alamein line, and they really did not have the power to break through decisively. They had reached the end of their logistical capability, but we did not know that. The world at large did not know that, and hence there was a great deal of uncertainty. So we have to be equally cautious in observing the results and what is going on with the Ukraine and Russia now. Russia is still obviously taking exorbitant casualties, and they are continuing their meat grinder attack. But it may be because they really have they really have nothing else to throw. Their missile attacks are symbolic. They are not really forcing Ukraine's collapse, and Ukraine is, given the current administration's desire to rush as much aid as possible to Ukraine before the incoming Trump administration takes over. Okay, that just creates a situation that Ukraine could exploit. What say you?
Very interesting, because Now, very important consideration is the economic strength of Russia, Ukraine, and of course the West, or US and Western Europe, separately if you wish. Again, even here, it's very difficult to draw conclusions because for all information that I have in open sources and elsewhere, Russia's economy is actually is dying to tell you the truth. If it wouldn't be for the this um, sort of the war-like, complete military war-like economy, similar to Second World War,
Mhm.
Russia almost has no other real economy at all. And even if it has no manpower, it has no technology, it has no the spare parts that are required even to continue to operate their um, oil fields, oil gas production, and so on. On the other hand, because all their economies now is on a war-like terms, they are capable to manufacture not superior of any kind, not even equal to West, but nevertheless colossal quantity of all kind of rather primitive but still um, capable weapons to keep killing not only soldiers but civilian people as well, and they continue to do so. And this latest story with this super missile Oreshnik, or they call it by 5 or 6 different names. Some people believe that it's intercontinental missile adapted to act like a mid-range missile or vice versa. So nobody's sure really.
It would be amazing if they were actually cannibalizing, in effect, cannibalizing their intercontinental ballistic missile force in order to reduce it and make it act like an intermediate range ballistic missile force, which would be although it would look fearsome on the surface, it would just basically illustrate how the Russian war machine is essentially consuming itself, which would be they cannot keep this up forever.
Yeah. What's interesting is that this so-called Reshnik, let's put it this way, but it had its certain message to the Western countries, US, but specifically to Western Europe, because that's a radius where it can actually reach its targets wherever they are. Another thing is that I've seen it in a few quite credible publications that Western Europe cannot hold a long war against Russia. 2 weeks to 2 months is a maximum. They simply run out of ammunition. They don't have enough ammunition for prolonged conflict with Russia, similar to what Ukraine has. Nobody can do that except Ukraine, with great help from the West and from the United States. No one can do it. Even U.S. stockpiles are in certain areas are being depleted. Some areas they still have a lot, and most areas probably I would say, without. I'm not a specialist on the ammunition of the United States, but from open sources, you can make some get some information.
This I see a very interesting possibility here, in that given what we are seeing in production on both sides, we may end up in 2025 having an armistice by default, where both sides are simply too exhausted to really sustain offensive operations, and really it's like two heavyweight boxers who have punched themselves out and exhausted themselves. They would be practically leaning against each other in the final rounds of the bout. So what you could have here is an armistice or stalemate by default, by exhaustion. And so then again, this provides an opportunity for the incoming Trump administration to seize the initiative in whatever means it deems best. And this is also a very interesting situation because as the United States is incoming about their Elon Musk and Ramaswamy trying to cut into the U.S. debt and reduce U.S. waste. And in order for them to do that, they have to be able to, at a minimum, they have to be able to reduce the national debt, the annual surplus, by $900 billion a year. Yeah, that's the interest rate, current interest rate on the national debt. If they do that, they're just treading water. They're not making the national debt go down. It's not going to go any worse, but that's not good enough. They have stated that they want to eliminate $2 trillion worth of debt in their first year and so forth. And that would reduce, if they applied it all to reducing the national debt and did not engage in any more excessive spending, then you would start to marginally reduce the national debt, the interest on the national debt, and you would be making progress. That would be a way for us to judge whether or not the second Trump administration will in fact be able to substantially reduce the national debt. There is, however, some observers have stated that if you have a debt like that, without touching, if you cannot do it realistically without touching entitlements such as Social Security. Well, people have overlooked a potential solution, which I have identified, which I will describe here for you, that could, in conjunction with the Trump administration's other efforts, such as trying to restructure Medicare and also identify and eliminate waste across the federal government, as well as disestablishing a number of federal departments and reducing debt that way. The way you do it is you have to remember that the Social Security system, although it is a major entitlement, when it was established in 1935, the original eligibility age, here's the key, the original eligibility age was 62. The life expectancy of most Americans during the Great Depression, when it was established, was below 62, less in the high 50s. So essentially, the Social Security system in its initial stages was self-sustaining because the majority of Americans would die before they actually reached Social Security eligibility age. Social Security was originally intended to act as a supplement to one's retirement, not your sole means of existence, not your sole means of support. It was anticipated that you would have savings and other things to supplement your security. Now, in the current situation, if we keep that attitude, I also noticed that over the previous decades, the eligibility age was gradually increased towards 67. And what that did is it added additional surplus. It helped expand gradually the available funds for Social Security. Now, however, in the current situation, because this is not a normal situation, because it is practically unprecedented with the level of national debt that we have, the only way that you can realistically reduce the national debt is by, in effect, raising the eligibility age for Social Security to age 75, which would be 4 years still lower than the current life expectancy, which is 79. But here's the key. You must raise the eligibility age for Social Security suddenly. Don't phase it in gradually. You raise it suddenly to age 75. As of such and such a date, the eligibility age for Social Security across the board is 75. Not 62, not 67, but 75 for everyone. Now, this proposal would not throw anyone who is currently on Social Security off of Social Security. They stay on Social Security. What it does do is it effectively shuts off immediately any additional people from coming on to Social Security. It in effect freezes the number of people who are on Social Security for a period of 8 years. During that 8 years, what happens, do you think? The people on Social Security, they naturally leave the Social Security system when they reach the end of their appointed lives. It is natural attrition. As that happens, the surplus that results from this shrinking of the Social Security population will very markedly increase to where you have essentially hundreds of billions and then trillions of dollars in surplus occurring in the Social Security system, which the administration can then apply towards more sharply reducing the national debt, divert that into reducing the national debt. What it also does is a nice additional bonus. It enables President Trump to carry out his promise without real fear of negative consequences of not taxing Social Security benefits for those who are currently on Social Security. They are going to more than make that up by the shrinking of the shrinking of the Social Security population through natural attrition. As that happens, it doesn't force anyone off. It does not impoverish anyone. What it does require is for the American population to take a different attitude towards retirement and investment and savings. They must not assume that Social Security is going to meet all of their needs when they retire. That's what the Social Security Administration itself says. They only anticipate that Social Security meets about 40% of your available needs. So as Americans, 67 and younger, all the way down, take a new attitude towards saving and investment. Do not spend more than you earn. Do not live like there's no tomorrow. You have to act responsibly in order to help reduce the national debt. If this is done in conjunction with Musk and Ramaswamy, as well as, I believe, if Dr. Oz is able to effect significant reforms in Medicare that will substantially reduce the costs of American healthcare, which currently is the most expensive in the world, and it does not need to be the most expensive in the world. There are more efficient ways to operate it. If all of this is done in conjunction, the Social Security system reform will act as an engine driving down the national debt and creating a more favorable situation for the United States, and I would assert for the world in general. What say you, Sasha?
I'm wondering if that's a plan. Don't you think that people who are 67, 68 will rush for Social Security?
Those who are about under this thing, here, you're quite correct. Here is the people who are about to turn 67, and all of a sudden they see, oh, now it's 75. Okay, here's where they have to make a decision. What they do is the most logical thing for them to do is if they are physically able to keep working in their current job, they continue working. They continue working, or if they want to, shall we say, ease off, if they want to, they can ask their employers to put them on part-time hours, 30 hours a week or less rather than 40. They can phase into it. They would still, by continuing to work part-time rather than full-time, they would get part of the benefit. They would get less stress. They would still be able to plan for retirement. They would still have better income on a part-time job than they would with Social Security. So again, they have to reorient their thinking, and basically the administration could support encourage employers to give employees consideration for working part-time rather than full-time. And also you could increase investment incentives, such as increasing the amount of income that could be deferred or put into tax-free accounts, retirement accounts. You basically because the Trump administration wants to cut taxes. Good. Increase those tax benefits for those who are wanting to retire eventually or in the very near term, rather than simply, you see where we're going with this. Incentives can be created which do not involve excessive government spending. And you would encourage states to participate more in helping their people who are nearing retirement age within the states. You turn the responsibility more of that to the states rather than relying solely on the federal government to be the disperser of cash to individual employees.
Jonathan, I'm thinking about there are so many goals and problems to fix for Trump administration about this financial situation, which we are find out what's the best way to deal with it. Seems to me this is very reasonable proposal to raise minimum wage to 75 and do it all at once. That's fine. Now we discussed the immigration and all the things.
We discussed that the proposal essentially to what Sean Hannity had mentioned to Governor Abbott. He suggested giving each illegal immigrant who voluntarily agrees to come forward for deportation, give them a check for $1,000, and they leave with their check for $1,000 and they go to the country they're going to be deported to. That by itself is good. That's a good incentive, but it must be given teeth. It must be, you have a carrot, now you must have a stick that goes with it. And in order to do that, you essentially put a bounty of $1,000 on every illegal immigrant that exists within the United States. If the illegal immigrants come forward voluntarily, they get paid $1,000 for voluntarily being deported. If they choose not to, then any illegal immigrant who is identified by an American citizen within the country, any American citizen who successfully identifies to law enforcement and immigration authorities the location and identity of these illegal immigrants, those American citizens will be paid the $1,000 bounty rather than the illegal immigrant. So now you have created a very powerful mechanism which essentially voluntarily mobilizes all American citizens who support President Trump's deportation policies. They can have the opportunity to voluntarily assist law enforcement in identifying and locating illegal immigrants. And then Tom Homan would have at his disposal essentially a multi-million person informant network, so to speak, that identify a nationwide intelligence network.
So they would essentially act as the paid volunteers to provide their service.
They would act as paid volunteers. And so this would also provide to Americans who are, after all, who are struggling to make ends meet, but if they have knowledge of where the illegal immigrants are where the illegal immigrants are, then they simply provide that information to law enforcement. Law enforcement, if they credit those people with having successfully identified them, then those people get paid. And it would be a way for Americans who are struggling to help make ends meet while the president's anti-inflation policies take effect, because the administration is going to be looking for ways, such as by producing more energy through increased oil drilling and oil production, to lower the costs of energy overall, which will in turn have an impact on the costs of food and other things which depend upon energy.
Well, don't you think that there will be a new class of bounty hunters? If you be able to get your hands on 5 immigrants a week, so you get paid $5,000 a week, $20,000 a month or so. Okay, this is not such a bad money for people who otherwise would make much less money. So they would even go from state to state.
Exactly. What you are looking at, Sasha, is you are looking at, by putting a bounty of $1,000 on every illegal immigrant within the country, depending on what estimate you look at, they say there are as few as 11 million illegal immigrants. Some say there are as many as 21 million. So that is a pool of $11 billion to $21 billion, which will either go to illegal immigrants who voluntarily bring themselves forward for deportation, or to Americans who successfully identify the unwilling.
There was a floated actually on this channel situation where illegal immigrant would have an option to pay $10,000 and legalize his presence in the United States and become legal immigrants instead of illegal. So it's $10,000. And do you think is it a viable proposal?
No, because the illegal immigrants wouldn't necessarily have access to that level of funding in
So
order
you
to
will
do.
get something similar to students' loan that you will have to pay until the
And
rest of your life.
and the Biden administration was very unsuccessful in its attempt to, shall we say, buy votes in that regard. Is that did not work. Now, however, we also have discussed on this channel another option, which is inspired by let's see, inspired by the idea of volunteering for the military to serve in the military for a period of 5 years. If they do that, then they earn their citizenship at the end of 5 years, provided they serve honorably, that they qualify for military service, and there you would have a a source of willing recruits, able-bodied recruits, to help offset any shortfalls in recruitment for the U.S. Army as well as other services. Of course, this depends upon the skill and ability and physical fitness of those illegal immigrants who wish to volunteer. Now, of course, we have the hammer here. If they fail to meet standards, they're deported. If they misbehave or they commit a crime or they otherwise fail to meet the standards, they can be deported. We have the hammer to compel their cooperation and service, even if they wish to become citizens of this country. Essentially, you have to earn it.
Okay, so this is what we are concerned about illegal immigrants. And of course, there is a border issue, there is a Russia-Ukrainian issue. If that's not enough, there is a Middle East, there is a Taiwan-China situation, the ties with Western Europe would have to take some kind of normalization, formalization, whatever other mechanism. Do you think that Trump would have at his possession qualified staff to deal with all these issues?
That is his major task coming in. He had his main priority, given his experience during his first term. His overriding concern is having staff who he knows will be loyal to him and will be willing to support him in carrying out his policies. He does not want a prima donna. He does not want somebody coming in who thinks he's smarter than the president, who think, oh, I know how to do this better than the president does. No. Yeah. President Trump learned his lesson from his first term. He needs to obviously look for staff that he can trust and depend upon to be hardworking and certainly have enough competence to be able to carry out the tasks that he gives them. And of course, there's going to be pushback from the Democratic Party as well as from other Republicans who may have reservations about certain of his people whether they are qualified by experience or just sheer ability or people skills to be able to carry out the tasks of the administration successfully. This is a very interesting challenge. Nobody ever said that it was not going to be challenging for the Trump administration in their second term. The advantage is that because he won not only the required votes in the Electoral College, which our constitutional republic requires, but it has the added bonus of he won a majority of the popular vote, which is not required, but the Democrats insist that that his victory is not really credible unless he won a majority of the popular vote as well, which he did. And that is what Democrats are really angry about now, because they are busy accusing each other of whose fault was it that we lost. Well, yeah, there are a number of reasons which could be pointed out, but which we will not go into on this program, because all you have to do is just watch on the other networks. Just look at what the Democrats are saying to each other and accusing each other. And of course, they're also accusing the American people of being stupid.
John,
Yeah, think about it.
I think that Trump has already begun briefings on all the international affairs and all the news relevant to the president and so on. And it might be one reason that he is much less vocal than usual, because now I think he's getting enormity of all the problems that he has to deal with. And almost immediately after inauguration, starting January 21st, he has his hands completely tied up dealing with all these problems. But he has all the toolbox at his possession. He has presidency, he has Senate, he has a House, he has a judiciary, he has a majority of votes, and the anything that you can think of, he has it. So it will be very difficult for him to back down from one or any of his plans and promises, or both. And he will have to very diligently to proceed and succeed in every direction. Even in one department that he could deal with, it will be dealt with serious blow as either his inability to deal with this problem, or his nominees' inability, or both, or whatever. So he has to very, very determinedly to follow up on all his plans.
Well, he knows it's his final term. He
Yeah.
knows that his legacy and how history will judge him depends upon how he performs in this term. He already knows what the priorities of the American people are that voted him in. He knows what their top concerns are.
Right.
They have told him, they have basically said in the various polls that the country is going in the wrong direction. They have identified illegal immigration and the economy as the two top concerns. And so all these other things have to be prioritized. The measure that I have described for restructuring Social Security by raising the Social Security eligibility age to 75 suddenly, it has not been suggested by anyone else as far as I've been able to determine. But that measure, if it is applied firmly and fairly, and also, by the way, at the same time, you would be identifying those people who are on Social Security, such as illegal immigrants, and you take them off of Social Security because it's working at cross purposes with your top goal. You're not going to try to deport illegal immigrants while you're at the same time trying to pay them Social Security. That just makes no sense at all. So there's going to be challenges there too. Removing waste, unnecessary spending, and there are a host of places where this country has been wasting money, arguing things which are not consistent with our national goals. And so it will be very interesting to see how the Trump administration proceeds. Here's the basic thing, the way I would grade the Trump administration on the national debt. If Musk and Ramaswamy and the administration are unable to generate a $900 billion surplus, if they're unable to and at least break even with the national debt interest, that's a failing grade. That's F. Barely passing is if they get a D plus or a D if they break even. Okay, it's not getting any worse. It's not getting any better. We've generated a $900 billion or a $1 trillion surplus. Okay, if Musk and Ramaswamy and the administration generate a $2 trillion surplus, which does in fact can be applied to the national debt, and it starts going, the interest level starts going down on the national debt, that's a gentleman's C. You've achieved your objective, but you can do better. And if they apply these other measures, which creates a surplus of greater than 2 trillion, then you get a B plus or an A, depending upon how large that annual surplus is and how long it is sustained. That is a very clear report card, a very clear set of standards that shows how successful the Trump administration will be to dealing what I regard as its single greatest problem, right next to illegal immigration. The national debt is number one, in my view, and illegal immigration is number two. Those two measures that I have suggested would address them, and if they are properly applied, the American public would have a very easy means of judging how successful this administration will be on its two top priorities.
Sometimes there is one economic issue which arises from the foreign policy of Trump. Because if his foreign policy would be based on America First idea and withdraw from Asia and Europe and Middle East and elsewhere and concentrate only on United States. So then, in this case, why do Pentagon needs $1 trillion budget when all it needs, I'd say, maybe $50 million just to deal with the threats from Mexico and Canada? And that's about it.
Well,
and you're saving $1 trillion.
Yeah, here's the way that can be resolved. The United States, in its national security strategy, would have to adopt what I call a strategy of asymmetric response. In this strategy, the United States becomes the geopolitical balancer in the world, in a way similar to which Great Britain was relative to the continent of Europe during the 18th and 19th century. Great Britain maintained enough military power, naval as well as land power, to be able to balance against any power or combination of powers that threaten to dominate the Eurasian world island. On a larger scale, the United States becomes the geopolitical balancer, maintaining superior naval power, air power, and I would argue space power, because this is how asymmetric response, by developing that space fleet that would become a component of the worldwide strategic defense matrix that I propose, that would be designed to neutralize the nuclear weapons of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran if they ever develop a nuclear capability. So by neutralizing the nuclear weapons of other nations and by maintaining the United States as a firm geopolitical base that can supply weaponry to its NATO allies as well as to Ukraine, if you can maintain that balance, that is what you do. It is a defensive posture strategically, but it is designed by maintaining technological and military superiority in selected areas to maintain a balance indefinitely, but doing so much more economically. And one way that you could do that, by the way, is by not building any more nuclear weapons. By ceasing development on any further nuclear weapons or modernizing nuclear weapons, diverting that instead into the creation of the worldwide strategic defense matrix, WISDOM, and also developing the Space Force, which would be an asymmetric response to our opponents, because they do not have a space fleet. They have a space denial capability. They have a counter space capability designed to operate against our satellites, but they do not have a space fleet. If we develop a space fleet and use it to essentially neutralize their nuclear weapons as well as establish space dominance and be able to perform other planetary defense missions that these other nations could not possibly do, we would have a very firm foundation for establishing strategic stability at a reduced cost for the remainder of the 21st century and beyond.
Jonathan, I was thinking about this position of a world balancer of power, which Britain quite successfully adopted in its heyday. Today, United States, they were losing all wars lately. They had fiasco withdrawing from Afghanistan. And I think also there is some kind of a unwillingness to use its military power, even when it's needed, whether it's a Ukrainian situation or a Middle East situation or just elsewhere. There is a definitely failed attempt to use, or maybe there wasn't even an attempt. There was demonstration of power, but not use of power. So demonstration and use is slightly different terms. So how do you think the United States can reestablish its power based in the world today?
Well, we have to study history a lot better than we do, and learn the lessons of history a lot better, and not try to overcommit just because you have military power, uh, just because you have military power does not mean that you absolutely have to use it. As the Romans once stated, if you want peace, prepare for war. They were not saying if you want peace, wage war. No, it is, as one science fiction author once put it, I would rather have a gun and not need it than need a gun and not have it. So,
yeah. Well, let's see. Situation is that U.S. was very willing to deal with countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, and others by providing tremendous force and sometimes more successfully, sometimes less successfully. Now, in a serious situation where, for example, Ukraine, Russia is concerned, they are even scared to send enough ammunition and weapons to its friends or so-called friends, or I don't know how you want to treat Ukraine otherwise, but at least that's what's being said. And this it's kind of a situation now when most likely Trump, unfortunately, will not go far with Putin. That's quite obvious because you see, Putin doesn't need this for territories of Ukraine or for so-called oblasts of Ukraine. He doesn't need even 6 or even 10. He doesn't even need all Ukraine for that matter. He needs a humiliation of the West and United States. Very important. It's not just Western Europe, but United States as well. He wants to be treated as the world leader, a world power, because he, unlike others, he is discussing the use of nuclear weapons and not so nuclear weapons like this stupid Areshnik or other stuff or so on. So he's threatening no one power. Nobody, United States or UK said, Putin, we have our own nuclear forces, will annihilate you in a half-second time. Shut up, you. Nobody is doing that. Everybody is so quiet because, well, they have election coming up, so people will not vote for them if they will go too aggressive on Russia and so on. And a lot of people want to deal with Russia in the near future as soon as there will be some kind of peace and buy Russian resources or so on. So this is a very, very not very convenient situation for Trump. But I think he has capable advisors, and maybe he will lead him to the right decisions.
Well, I would point you to the fact that I would remind you of what former Russian President Boris Yeltsin said in a speech to the Russian Duma in 1994, when he said the only reason Russia is considered a great power is because its armed forces have nuclear weapons. That statement by itself tells you pretty much all you need to know. And the history of the Russian perception of U.S. strategy and the factors which influence it demonstrate that what the Russian leadership fears more than anything else is the potential of American technology to neutralize the one thing that makes Russia a great power, its nuclear missile arsenal. Therefore, that explains why Putin has repeatedly been doubling down on his nuclear capability. He's been brandishing it, threatening to use it, threatening to escalate it. He is hoping that the Western fear of escalation is so great that they will give Putin anything he wants. That is what he is counting on. He is counting on fear. And so, therefore, what President Trump's challenge is to recognize what the Russian mindset is, and also recognize that he has the tools available to him to neutralize the Russian threat for the long term, and simply have the will and the willingness to execute. He certainly has the courage. Of that there's no question, given his experience in just trying to get elected. So really, he has the tools available to him. He has the potential to bring the Space Force to its full potential, and to use that as a means of creating the worldwide strategic defense matrix, which would in effect neutralize the nuclear threat from Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and create the basis for achieving strategic stability for the remainder of the 21st century. The tools are available. the strategies are there. Now the only question remains, will they be willing to execute and work together sufficiently well to bring these things to pass?
Okay, we'll see it real soon. And thank you so much for today's program, Jonathan, and have a great weekend, and all our listeners. And we'll see you Tuesday, same place, same time.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.